Hello,
Hi.
my name's Alan Keck, and I've been making pots for 60 years. Started when I was about 13 years old, and I just fell in love with the material. I get a real big thrill out of making something from nothing with my hands and my heart and my mind. And I love the potter's wheel. I do sculptures nowadays, and I make all my parts on the wheel because I love the wheel. And I love to teach people on the wheel. And like you are, I'm sure, every time you sit down on the wheel, I have the same emotion. I've got high hopes, and that's the way I approach it. And I got high hopes, and I bet you do too. So what I'm going to do is start from the beginning, and I'm going to teach you my methods. And I'm going to explain why. And for those people who are particularly new at throwing pots, you're the people that I really have luck with when I'm teaching. And I do things differently. If you're someone who has more experience, you should try to learn some of my methods and then incorporate them into what you do well already and use your best practices. I can teach you whether you're a brand new beginner, whether you've had a few years of experience, or whether you have a lot of years of experience. I still have something to offer. And I'm lucky that I have some very good friends, students, and colleagues that are helping me out with the cameras. And they're my students, and they've been through this with me a lot, and are very successful as potters. And so I'm lucky to have them helping me out, and I really appreciate the help I get from them. So I'm going to start out by, we've already done a tutorial on how to get your clay ready when you get it in a brand new bag of clay, and what to do with it, how to prepare your clay, and how to get ready to get on the wheel. You need to do a good job of wedging your clay and get it blended good, and you need to have it in a form, even if it's just a round ball, so that when you throw it down on the wheel, it's going to be as close to being round and centered in the middle of the wheel as you can get it before you ever put water to the clay. So, going to go down good and firm. I've got a little over 4 pounds of clay there. That's how much you ought to be using. Part of the reason people have a real hard time when they're beginners is because they got started out with 1 pound of clay or 2 pounds of clay. You get your hands all wrapped over on top of each other if you're using that little amount of clay. You need to have more clay on the wheel so you can really get your hands and your all your muscles involved. And we want to start to develop tactile memory, which is a sense of touch in your hands, muscle memory, so that every time you lay your hands on the clay, you have your hands positioned in the right place, and so that you have a memory, muscle memory of what it feels like to do it right. Because we want to, once you get it and you're doing each step correctly, then it's just going to come naturally, and you're just going to go from one step to the other, and it's going to set you free. You need to listen to me as far as how my hands are approaching the clay, where I'm putting pressure in, what I'm feeling in the clay. And you'll learn quickly, but you have to interpret what you see through your mind back through your hands. And that's a little more difficult, I know. It's always easier if you've got a good teacher right there with you, hands-on, and that's the way I normally teach. So here we go. We're going to start out, and everybody ought to start by learning how to make a cylinder. If you learn how to make a cylinder, you can make so many things, but you got to learn the right techniques. So I'm going to take this clay, put it down firm, right in the middle of the wheel. And I'm going to start to make friends with this clay right off the bat. I'm going to turn it on. I missed the middle a little bit. That's all right. And when you're centering, you'll have your clay going at a little bit quicker pace. I'm going to put a little bit of water on there. And then I'm going to take my finger and press down right along the edge here and just seal that clay down to the wheel head or the bat, whichever you have. Now, put some water on, lay your hands on there, keep your elbows in close, because if you get your elbows out here, you're cutting off all your strength right there. And you got one hand working against the other, right? We're going to keep our elbows in close to the body. Brace wherever you can brace. I'm on my tiptoes and I'm bracing against the splash pan. I'm bringing my arms in, I'm bracing against the splash pan. And when I put my hands on, first of all, I'm laying them on here and I just want to move the clay to the middle of the wheel. So I'm keeping my elbows in close. My hands like this, I'm pushing this way, not like that. So I'm laying my hands on there and I'm feeling all these bumps and how it's out of center. So I'm going to feel those bumps. I'm going to lock my thumbs on top and the bottom of my hands are right down on the wheel head. So elbows in here, I'm going to lean in on it. And I'm moving from my waist in, right? I'm not trying to do this with muscles in my arms. I want to lean forward on it and use the weight and the mass of my body to press in and just hold it steady. So I'm feeling it, I'm pushing it forward, and I'm holding it. And that clay is running right across here. See where that slip's building up? That's where the pressure's at. And as it's turning, it's starting to smooth out. Now, this right here where it's out of center, I want to get rid of that right now because that throws everything off up above it. So I just take my finger, go right down like that and trim that off. If you don't take it off, it catches your hand and you start bouncing like this and you just have a hard time centering. So now I move the clay to the middle of the wheel head. It's not centered. Now when you put your hands on the clay, and when you take your hands off the clay, you need to do it gently. If I'm leaning on that clay and moving it, and I just pull my hands off, there it goes. But if I put pressure on it, hold it steady, and then I slowly take my hands off, the clay will simply relax into center. All right. That still is not centered. Trimming off a little here. This is the next step to put the clay into center. The reason I teach this method is you can have a small ball of clay like this and center it up this way, or I can have a 50-pound ball of clay on like this and center it the same way. So, to center this clay, my left hand goes down on the side, thumb runs right to the middle. I'm not going to dig my thumb in. I'm just going to lock my thumb on top. Then it's like I'm going to form a T with this hand, right? And my little finger is going to cross the thumb. I'll get the slip off so you can see this better. This hand goes down like this. This hand comes across. My little finger crosses my thumbnail. My first finger is down here, and then I'm going to bend my wrist, and I'm bracing everywhere. I'm bending my wrist, and when I pull my hands off, you'll see where the slip is, and that's where the pressure is in on my hands. Here and there. So my hands come on like this. I'm going to get my all the way down to my wrist, and I'm going to brace, keep my elbows in, and I'm going to lean on it, and if you watch, you'll see the clay move. And then I'm slowly going to relax, and the clay is going to relax into center. So there the clay's moving. Now slowly relax, and the clay will relax right in the center. Going to trim this off that I don't need. And there I've got a centered ball of clay. If you step back 20 feet away from this and look at it, when it's turning, it'll look like it's not turning at all because it's centered, right? So it's a little wider at the base, narrow at the top. Now, Next step is we want to sink a straight hole. Hands on both sides, thumbs in a V, and thumbs to the middle. And as you sink a hole with your thumbs, your wrists have to come up. If you don't lift your wrists up, you'll smash this down like a mushroom, and we don't want to do that. So, I'm putting a little pressure on my thumbs. As my thumbs go down, my wrists come up, and I sink my hole. Okay, now I could sink a hole all the way down with my thumbs. But you're not always going to have a small ball of clay. We know it. So if you got a bigger ball of clay, your thumbs aren't long enough. So this is the next step. You place your left hand in the shape of a U. A U, not a C. A U. And it's just a cradle up on top. Not putting any pressure on. And we're keeping it in close. Now, 3 fingers. Your longest finger is going to do the drilling, and I'm drilling at a little bit of an angle. And I'm just running through my hand like a cradle. And I'm sinking that hole. Slow and steady, right straight down. Now, when you put your hands on, take them off gently. If you feel your fingers starting to go like this, your hole's going out of center. So you want to brace your arm and come in and press back just a little bit, and hold it steady, and it'll start running smooth again, right? But try to sink a good straight hole. All right, so I got to go on down a little deeper. And there, look in there, there's a good straight hole. Not wobbling, not moving around. All right, so to make a good cylindrical form that you can make a nice pot out of, this is the step that so many people don't get right. And they end up throwing pots that are real thick on the walls down at the bottom, and then they're thin on top, right? And they have heavy pots. The reason is because they're not spreading the bottom. And I call it making a donut. And this is how it works. We're always going to try to keep our hands together, working together. And your left hand is here for balance. It's there for balance. It's not going to be doing any work here. You're there for balance. I'm going to take my fingers, go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to curl back. Just like that, all the way to the bottom. I'm going to curl my fingers back and make a groove down there. And I don't know if that can be seen or not with the camera. I'm just starting to make that groove. Okay, the next step is I'm going to curl my fingers on back until it feels like I got a big fat donut in my hand.
Can you show me the curl again? I'm just getting on your arm.
Just like that. Curl my fingers back underneath. And I'm going to do it, then I'm going to show you an example. So I'm curling my finger back underneath, and I'm spreading the bottom wide and flat. Well, I got a big air bubble in there. Okay, so let me show you what I did. I have some examples here. This is what that looks like if I cut it in half. Mm-hmm. The bottom is spread wide, and here's the donut. So as I'm curling my hand back underneath, I start here, curling my finger back. I'm not pulling back, curling it back under until it feels like I've got this fat donut in my hand right there. Right here. This is what that looks like. It's thinner down here, and then it bulges right there. Okay? What we're going to do after we spread the bottom, that's the key to making thin walled pots. That move. After we do that, we're going to make our first pull. And all we're going to do is just put enough pressure on here and come up to make this first pull and to make the walls an even thickness. And this is what that'll look like. The bulge was here. We make a pull, so it's going to be that thick all the way up, nice and even walls. That's the first pull. And then we have this nice flat bottom and nice corner down here. and we don't have all that extra weight. We'll start every pull at the bottom and pull a thin pot. Okay, let's give her a spin, see what happens. Now, when I'm pulling, I like to use a sponge. If I'm sitting down, I like to use a sponge. If I got a big pot and I'm standing up to pull, I just use my hands. But for now, I'm teaching on the sponge. Now we're going to use our left hand to point the way. Our thumb always knows where our fingers are at. It just knows, right? So if we take our left hand and run it right over here at 5 o'clock, there's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. 5 o'clock is where we want to work, right here in front of us. We're going to take our left hand, our thumb is going to point the way. And we're going to run our fingers right straight down on the inside, and our thumb is going to point right straight down. So if I pull that out, right, they're pointing at each other. The thumb is going to point at where I need to put the pressure on. Because we need to take pressure from the outside hand against pressure from the inside hand, make a little groove in there, and then lift that clay up and make a pull to make the walls go up. If you're pressing out with the inside hand here, and you're pushing in over there, that is not going to work. And it's got to be the same height, right? So we're going to use that thumb to show us where to go. Right straight down, fingers right straight down, 5 o'clock. Then I'm going to take a sponge. I'm not going to curl my hand under. I'm going to take it and lay my wrist in like this. And I'm going to move the thumb out of the way. So now this groove right here that I'm making is straight across from that finger. This is what we got going. My hand is straight across. You see where my thumb is, and this is where my pressure point is. And I'm coming in on the outside with my pressure point from the outside sponge against those fingers, and then I'm pulling right up the pot. So, you see where my fingers is here? I'm getting right straight across. So, this is what it looks like. Thumb pointing right straight down. I'm going to put just enough pressure on in that groove I made to pull the bulge out. Let's see what happens. A little bit of pressure. Coming up slow and steady. Boy, I've got a big old air bubble in there. And when I get to the top, I'm easing off the pressure. Now look where my elbows and my arms are. They're in here close. That's how I can be so steady. If you get out here, you're not going to be steady. So you need to keep them in close to steady your arms. Okay. Second pull. I'm going to get rid of this air bubble in here. All right. This is our wall right now. Right? Same thickness all the way up. The next step is we're going to make a pull. I'm going to take my fingers on the inside corner, right down there, and I'm going to press out. And I'm going to press in with my sponge right out here and make a groove right down there at the bottom. And I'm going to hook this clay and bring it on up the wall. Here we go. Now I've already pulled this high enough that my fingers won't go all the way to the bottom. So I have to lift my hand up and to get my fingers all the way down. But my thumb is still going to point to the position of my outside pressure. So I'm going to put on a little pressure right there, come up slow and steady, and then as soon as I can, I'm going to touch my thumb to my outside hand and pull up nice and slow and steady. This was recycled clay. That's why these air bubbles are in here. And when I get to the top, ease off the pressure. And it just came up a couple or 3 inches. Okay? Now, I don't need this clay down here, so I'm going to get rid of it. Because I want to start my pulls right there at the bottom. It's turning pretty fast, and I'm going to cone it back in. And right now, I've got to do something about these air bubbles, and I did not get a needle too long. So, I'm just going to see if I can break them. This really disturbs me having these air bubbles in there. So I've got some big air bubbles. I need to repair that. If you do a good job of fixing your clay to begin with, you won't have that. So I'm going to have to start over again. We're not going to start over with another ball of clay, but I want to do something here that's more difficult. In order to get those air bubbles out, real weak place right there. I'm going to have to put this back down, if I can. That air bubble goes all the way through the wall. And this is all a matter of feel. Can't believe I'm having to do this.
No, it's perfect, because you just, instead of doing a beginner video, now you're doing an advanced video.
Okay, so I'm taking this ball of clay and going all the way back down, and I'm hopefully squeezing some of that air back out of those walls. I can still feel some in there.
I can bring my needle tool. Do you want me to go get
Yeah,
one?
let's pause it.
Okay, I'm gonna pause.
There's my bag right there. Okay, so I had the pot 3/4 thrown, and the air bubble was just too big. So I had to put it back down so I can start over again. And when I start over again, I don't want to get another ball of clay. So here we go again. It's back into the donut. Gonna make another pull. I'm gonna slowly go down a little. Then when I feel those air bubbles, I'll try to get them out a little sooner. So here's that pull. My thumb pointed right straight down. Move the thumb over a little. That's where my outside hand goes. And then I made the first pull again. Now, I'm putting the groove in, right down at the bottom, to hook this clay and bring it up. That's another reason why you go down here and you trim some of the fat off the bottom. So you can start your pull right down there. My thumb's pointing right where I want to be. My fingers are all the way down here. A little pressure right down there. Come up slow and steady. Touch my thumb from the inside hand to the outside hand. It makes you steadier. Ease off the pressure when you get to the top. Compress the rim just a little bit. Okay. See these throw lines? Those are called throw rings, and you can see them on the inside of the pot also. You want them to be nice and steady and even. Okay. So, going back down, I'm going to start a groove right down here and make the next pull. Now, I've got to put my thumb inside to get my hand down here because it's too tall. As I'm pulling up the pot, I'm pulling up, pulling up, pulling up. As soon as I get my thumb out, I want to touch and finish the pull. That's important. When you're down here, you're liable to be kind of unstable. But when you get up there and can touch, you'll be much more stable and can finish the pull. Okay, let's go down, make another pull. Here we go. Hands straight across, pot's coming up, getting thinner. Now I'm going to bring my thumb out, finish the pull. Okay, hands off gently. So this is getting thinner, and most of the weight's coming out of it. This is a good time to explain something. When you've got a cylinder going up and you need to start learning how to visualize where your fingers are at, you should be able to visualize that just like it's in glass. When I run my finger down that wall, I should be able to visualize that even going through the clay and be able to see where those fingers are at. If I start here, I know that as I'm running down, it's right there, right? A good way to check is stick your finger in there somewhere, anywhere, and take a needle tool and stick it through. See if you can touch right on the end of your finger. Move it to a different place, stick it through, and touch. If you're pushing out here and you're over there, you don't have it right. But if you're right over here where your finger is and you go through, you start to develop that sensation of you know where your hand is in the inside. And you can practice it with a needle tool. Every time I go in, I touch my finger. I don't ever miss because I know where that hand is. That's a way to practice, to start to get to the point where you know where your inside pressure point is. Okay. Try it. It works. Okay, we just about got this cylinder pulled out. And I tell my students that if you can throw a pot and never have to trim it, boy, you come real close to throwing a perfect pot. This one's not perfect because I had those air bubbles in there. And you can see it's off just a little on the top. Well, we'll see if we can pull it a little thinner. So, hand goes all the way down inside, right down to there. Putting a groove on the inside, a groove on the outside. Hooking that clay right there, pressure point straight across. My elbow on my left hand's up pretty high, but my right hand is steady because it's on my leg. And I'm pulling up slow and steady. All the way up the pot. If it starts to wobble on me down below, I'm not going to worry about that because that just means that I'm pulling it real thin. Right here where it's starting to wrinkle, that's telling me, send a signal saying, man, we're going thin, baby. And that's it. So I'm going to come out here and just kind of straighten that up a little bit. And you'll notice my arm is braced on my leg again. Very gently. Moving the clay a little bit. Okay? So there it is. You're not going to get a whole lot thinner than that, I don't think. I'm guessing that it's going to be somewhere close to that, which is a pretty thin wall. They don't really need to be that thin, but it's possible. So, take a little bit off right down here. Okay, so now we moved over to the potter's wheel, and this is where the magic happens. This is where we have the privilege of using this material to make something from nothing. And to make something that can last for eternity after it's been fired in a kiln. And we get the privilege of doing this with our own hands, our own mind, and our own heart. And that's why I always have high hopes when I sit down on the potter's wheel, and I'll bet you do too. It just gives you that feeling of satisfaction that you've made something that's never existed before, and you made it with your own hands, and you can take such a great deal of satisfaction in that. And it really is magic. And I got high hopes for all of us, especially when we sit down on the wheel. So here we go. You notice this ball of clay looks like it's almost centered already. So, I'm taking, that's the job's halfway done right there. And my clay is soft enough I can deal with it. So I want to take this clay, and I don't want to get my bat wet, because then it's going to cause a film between the bat and the clay, and it's not going to stick very good. So we want to try to hit right in the middle, and you can see I missed. Well, that's all right. You miss a little bit, you move it right over if you play soft enough. So, time to make some magic happen. And this is an old Pacifica potter's wheel that I used. Started using it back in the 70s, and it's still a pretty good old wheel. So we'll see if we can have some fun with it. So I've got 4 pounds of clay, and when you're centering, you need to have your clay going faster than you do in the rest of the process. So I've got my wheel going at a pretty good clip. I'm not going to put a lot of water on there yet, because I want to just have enough moisture on there that it'll slide, and I want to go ahead and seal that down right there, so it just kind of seals it. Now, set your speed on your wheel and take your foot off the pedal. Now, if we want to move this clay around, that's why I don't mind at all that I missed the middle, because I want to show you how to move the clay around. We're going to keep our elbows in close. We're not going to be back here, because we're not in there close enough that we can brace our arms and get real steady and center it easily. And we're not going to try to center it with our arms. We're going to center it from our hands to our waist. So we're going to move in closer. We're going to put some water on there. And first of all, we're just going to make some slip. And as we're making that slip, we're going to get acquainted with the clay and make friends with it. And as that clay is going around and around, I'm feeling all of these bumps and these fingerprints. I'm feeling them with the tactile sensation in my hands. And as I start to center it, those are going to start to blend away. And I want to be sure that I can feel that. So I'm in contact with the clay, mentally and physically and spiritually. So I'm going to get it going again. When I put my hands on there and it starts to feel sticky, well, put some more water on it. We want it to be slippery. Now, I'm going to move in close, and I'm up on my tippy toes, and I lock my legs in here, and I'm going to brace myself anywhere I can brace. I'm going to brace on my legs, I'm going to brace on the splash pan, I'm going to brace one hand on the other. Whenever I can brace, I'm going to do that. It's going to make me stronger and steadier. Okay. Now, watch this clay. And as I start to put pressure on it, I'm going to start to move it. And I'm always going to be feeling all these bumps. And all I want to do now is move the clay to the middle of the wheel. So it's hands on both sides, thumbs to the middle. Don't dig in with your thumbs. Just lock your thumbs on top. Brace, in here close, get your elbows in close to your body, and lean in on it. And the more I lean in on it, the more it starts to conform to the shape of my hands and to my will. So, it's almost in the middle of the wheel head. It's not centered by any means. So, hands on both sides, thumbs to the middle. I'm going to lean in on it, and you watch here, and it's going to start to conform to the shape of my hands, and the bumps are going to start to leave it. And I'm not digging my fingers in like this. I don't want to make a bunch of grooves in it like that. I want to use the meatier parts of my hand. and this part, and I'm back against my body, and I'm going to lean in on it, lock my thumbs, move the clay to the middle of the wheel. Okay, this is where I see beginners struggling, trying to get this centered, because they've got this piece of clay right down here that's out of center. It's hard to get your hand down on it, and it just keeps moving them like this. And as long as that piece of clay is moving your hand like that, you're going to have a hard time centering what's above it. So you got a couple choices, but all choices lead to the same thing. We want to get rid of that, and instead of struggling around with it trying to center it, let's just trim it off. Now, I just trim them off with my finger, just right down like that and trim it off. That's probably a good way to get a fingernail caught and lose a fingernail. So I tell people, it's probably better if you use a tool. That needle tool right there has been sharpened in a pencil sharpener. That's the tool I got. I'm going to use that. But I could use this to trim it off. I could use this to trim it off, fettling knife. Or I could even use a trimming tool to trim that off. But the main thing is we want to get that off of there. So I'm just going to come right down like this. And I'm going to trim that a little bit off, because that's what's been throwing me off. So instead of struggling around and trying to get that centered with my hands, I'm just going to trim it off. So now it is centered. Okay, now this clay is moved to the middle of the wheel. It is still not centered. If you can see that it's moved, that it's actually turning, if you can stand back and see that it's turning, it's not centered. If it's really centered perfect, you can stand back away from it, and it will look like it's not even turning. But this has got some wobbles in it. So we're going to put the finish on it. And this method of centering, I use whether I'm centering a ball this big or whether I'm centering a ball plate this big. Same thing. So this is how I do it. I'm going to keep our elbows in close. If you get them out here, you cut all your strength off right there. Then you're going to muscle it around. We're going to keep our elbows in here so we can use our upper body. We want to take our left hand, and you really have to think this through. If you were sitting here with me, I'd be sitting right there with you, and I would be putting your hands where they need to be physically. You've got to look at what I'm doing and then run that through the mind and back down into your hands and do it the same way I do it. And I know you've got to do some interpretation in there. So we're going to take our left hand and lay it down on there like you're going to shake hands with somebody. Run our thumb right to the middle. We are not going to dig our thumb in. We're going to lock it right here so that when we push on it, the clay doesn't just go up. Okay? We're going to get some water on there. And I'm going to be putting pressure on here. And notice how my elbow is right up against my body. And I'm going to be putting some pressure on here. And then I'm going to be putting pressure on here. More pressure with the right hand. Just slightly more. So, left hand there, thumb to the middle. I'm going to take my right hand and place my thumbnail, my little finger, right over the top of my thumbnail. And I'm going to place my first finger right there at my wrist. And then I'm going to bend at the wrist so my hands look like this. And I'm going to scoot back a little bit so I can get my center of gravity down. I'm going to pop my leg back. Now, I'm going to move over on the side so hopefully the camera will see this clay move. I'm going to lean on it, move the clay, and then I'm going to slowly relax and allow the clay to relax into center. first I'm going to show you what happens if you don't relax slowly. So I'm putting pressure on, I'm moving the clay, holding it steady. Now if I just pull off of it, there you go. So left hand on, thumb to the middle, right hand here, little finger across the thumb, first finger on the wrist, bend at the wrist, lean on it, move the clay, slowly relax, and allow the clay to relax into center. A little rough right there in your center. Now, we want to start with a cylinder. I'm going to move this in and center this again, taller. Since we're doing a cylinder, we want to keep our clay in more narrow. If we let it get spread too wide, we're going to end up with a ball. So, here we are. Again, move the clay, hold it steady, slowly relax. Allow the clay to relax in the center. Okay, that's centered clay. Now it's in this shape where it's wider at the bottom, narrow at the top. Nice and smooth. Next step, we're going to sink our hole. Hands on both sides. Place your thumbnails together in the shape of a V. Not like this or like that, but keep your hands in front, thumbnails together in the shape of a V. As our thumbs go down, our wrist goes up. So we'll sink a hole with our thumbs, about like that. Gently take our hands off. Now, I'm going to put a little water in there. We could use our thumbs and we could push all the way down and sink our hole with our thumbs. And but I want you to learn this other method, because one of these days you might be sinking a hole from up here on a big piece of clay. So this is what we do. Put our left hand in the shape of a U, not a C, but a U. Get your wrist around, and it's just a cradle. We're not going to put any pressure on it. You can come up and go right up over the top. And then a little water in there, and as my fingers go down, I'm going to sink my hole with that longest finger. And my hand is going down like this, not straight down, but a little bit of an angle. If I feel my fingers start to wobble, I need to stop. And then I need to come back out, put a little bit of pressure on it to the side, and straighten that hole out. Because if we keep going on down, it's going to get worse and worse. Okay, here we go. Finish it off. I'm going to sink the hole on down until I get close to the bottom. Take my hands out gently. You can look right down inside there. I'm going to check it, see how thick it is. So I'm going to stick my needle tool through and pull it back out. And it's about that thick, which is a little over 1/4 of an inch. It could be a little bit thicker than that. If I cared about keeping this, I'd probably move a little clay back in there. All right, now the next step, and this is critical to throwing thin-walled pots, especially if your pots are real thick at the bottom, and then they're just thinner on top and they're heavy. It's because you're not doing this next step.
You want to see this?
And this is it. We're going to do what I call make a donut. And when you're doing it correctly, it's going to feel like you got a donut in your hand. And the bottom will be flat, and this is what it'll look like. It'll be thinner here with a bulge above it. And that's what will feel like a donut, like you got a donut in your hand. So we're going to start in the middle and we're going to curl our fingers back. Right in the middle, curl my fingers back, and it's going to feel like I've got a donut in my hand. Right there. Okay. So here we go.
Be up over you.
Yeah. From the top. Okay, so my fingers are going all the way down the bottom. My left hand is here. I'm not putting any pressure on. It's always there for balance, to keep you in balance. So it's just laying on the side of the pot. My thumb's on the outside. I'm going all the way to the bottom, and I'm making a groove down there. Can you see that, Deb, inside? I just made a groove in there.
You can see it now.
That's where I'm going to spread the bottom and make the donut. So my hand's down in there, and then I'm spreading that back and making the donut. Right now, this is what it's like. This is what it looks like from the side. Well, just curl my finger back and make that donut. Okay, so our next step is we're going to put just enough pressure on here so when we pull up the wall, we're going to straighten that wall up to the same thickness all the way up. And that's going to give us this corner. And that's what's going to make it so we can throw nice thin wall pots. So the next step is to make our first pull. Okay.
Want
Yeah.
me up over you or
You
down?
can sit back down.
I need to.
Okay. Now, here's some things that you want to keep in mind. Your thumb always knows where your fingers are at. It just works that way. Behind your back, above your head. Your thumb knows where your fingers are at. So we're going to use that to our advantage. We're going to let our thumb point the way. Now, to make our pull, we're going to reach our left hand across here with our fingers on the inside, our thumb on the outside, and we're going to come here to 5 o'clock position. 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. We're going to be over here at about 5 o'clock. I like to use a sponge on these small pots. And a thumb on one side, fingers on the other, and you got to hold on to that sponge so nobody can take it away from you. Don't curl your fingers back, because then you end up using the back side of your fingers. And what you want to do is open your wrist a little bit so that you're pressing in like this. See my fingers? And we're putting a little more pressure on probably with this finger. Now we're going to start right here at 5 o'clock. We're going to take our left hand and we're going to point our fingers right straight down, and our thumb is going to point right exactly where we need to put our sponge and our pressure point on the outside. Our thumb's going to point us to the right place. So we're going to reach down like that. Our thumb is pointing down here. So we're going to take our sponge where our pressure is, and we're going to move in here close, keep our elbows in close. And I'm going to replace my thumb with my pressure point with the sponge. It's going to be straight across right here. And I'm going to put the pressure on, and I'm just going to do enough pressure to pull that bulge out. Now, let's look at this. My fingers on the inside, there's my pressure point. My thumb's pointing right there at it. Then I'm bringing my pressure point from the outside and I'm putting it right there so it's straight across. Right there, you can see it. There to there. When you get the pressure points straight across from each other, that's when you can put on a little pressure and pull up the walls of the pot. if you put your hand down here and you got your thumb pointing over there, and you put your thumb where your pressure where your thumb's pointing, well, you're missing your hand, your inside pressure. That's why your thumb's got to be right straight down, showing you the way. You got to get these pressure points straight across, or at least the outside, but maybe a little bit underneath. Okay, so I'm putting on just enough pressure to pull the bulge out. My thumb's pointing away. I'm not digging in with my thumb, but it's those fingers and these fingers, and that's what's going to make the pot rise. So I'm putting a little pressure on, coming up slow and steady. Easing off when I get to the top. So right now, that's what I've got. Right? Okay. Let's do that again. Okay. Back in the donut. My thumb and my fingers straight down. My thumb's pointing to where I'm going to put my pressure point out here. My thumb's pointing down there. Here's where the pressure is. A little pressure. Both heads coming together. And I'm going to pull it right back up again. Okay? That's what we got. Alright, I'm going to trim some of this fat off the bottom here. It's always going to try to spread out on you. If I take that off, though, it allows me to get my outside pressure point right down there at the bottom. So I can start my pull right down at the very bottom. Okay. The next pull, I've got to put on a little pressure on the inside, and I'll make a little groove on the inside with my inside hand right down there at the bottom in the corner. And then with my outside hand, I'm going to make a little groove right there so it'll be straight across. Right out here. Then I'm going to hook that clay, keep the pressure on all the way up till I get to the top and ease off the pressure. Okay. Thumb and fingers pointing right straight down. I've made a groove on the inside, made a groove on the outside. It's going a little bit more faster than I need it to be going. I'm going to slow it down a little bit. Now, the speed at which you're pulling up the pot has to work with the speed that it's spinning. If the wheel is spinning very fast, you can pull up the pot faster. If the wheel is moving slowly, you have to pull up the pot slower. You don't want to be putting screw lines in because that makes your walls go thick and thin. So you have to get that working together, synchronized. The speed of the wheel and the speed of your pull. Okay, I've slowed this down, so I'm going to slow my pull down a little bit. Putting a groove in there, put some pressure on the inside. Pulling nice and steady. Nice even throw rings. Coming right on up to the top. Easing off the pressure. If I don't ease off the pressure, I'll come up here and do something like that. So ease off the pressure a little bit. But when you're easing off the pressure at the top, this is what you're going to end up with. Where it comes up thinner and then it has a little thicker rim on it. So after I make a couple more pulls, then I'll show you what to do with that. Doing a finger pull. Now we're making a cylinder, and cylinders, the centrifugal force of the wheel moving, it always wants to spread the pot out wider and wider. So about this point, we want to collar it back in. So we're going to give our thumbs in the back, hands wrapped around it. Our elbows and our arms are braced on the splash pan. A little bit of pressure. Come up nice and slowly. Curl your finger on top to keep it from rippling up. And collar that back in. So it's narrower at the top and it is at the bottom. I'll take a little more clay off here so I can start my pull down at the bottom. So it's not this thin yet, but it will be in a minute. So now I'm ready to make another pull. It's thinner here and down, and it's a little thicker here, and that's when I'm going to make a finger pull. I'm going to lay my thumb and my finger straight across from each other, but I'm not going to squeeze like that. Right here, and I'm going to lay my finger on my thumb, so it's this finger and that finger. I'm not squeezing with my thumb, it's just there to help me guide this one, and I'm putting a little bit of pressure on and coming up slow and steady. And easing off the pressure when I get to the top. And I'm compressing the rim a little bit. So now we've got about the same thickness all the way up. Ready for another pull. Okay. I want to be sure I've got an even coating of water, because if you've got places that are wet and dry, where it's drier it's going to grab, and where it's wetter it's going to be slippery, and your hand won't be steady. So it just needs to be evenly spaced out on your clay up and down. Now I'm still keeping my elbows in close, and at this point I'm reaching my fingers all the way down there, clear down to here. I'm all the way down there. But my thumb is still pointing right there where I need to put my pressure point on the outside. So here my fingers are down there, and my thumb is pointing to right here. I'm putting some pressure on, coming up slow and steady. That's getting thinner and taller. I'm touching my thumb on the outside here. And if it starts to wobble down there, that just means you pulled it pretty thin. So go ahead and finish your pull and then go back down, straighten it out. Okay, now I pulled it a little thinner down here than I probably should have at this point. So I got to get it collared back in.
And when you collar in, it thickens the wall of the pot.
Right. Every time you collar it in, it thickens the wall back up a little bit. I got a little bit greedy in that one. Now it's thin down here, but it's thicker up here. So now I got to come in and do some finger pulls. Sometimes I get ahead of myself when I'm teaching, because what is going to take me 2 pulls is going to take a beginner 4 or 5 pulls. So that's why I pulled it pretty thin just a minute ago.
So you used your needle tool to even off the top.
And I trimmed a little off the top where it was not running quite to my liking. Okay, so now I've got a nice straight walled cylinder. So I want to start to look at it and see how thick it is.
Should we look at it from the inside?
We're going to look at it with a needle tool. So I'm going to stick my needle tool through, reach down here and feel it. It's touching right there on the inside. Put my finger on there and pull it out. So see, it's only that thick down there. And if I look right here, that's how thick it is right there. So if I cut this, it's probably going to be the same thickness all the way up and down. Right here, it's that thick. Right there, it's that thick. So this is pretty thin. Pretty thin. I might give it one more pull. You can see it's not quite that thin. But that's thinner than you need in most pots. So we'll give this another little pull and see what happens. See if it's got enough magic to stand up here. Bring my thumb out and touch on the outside. Makes me steadier to finish my pull. Straighten this out just a little bit. Okay. Now, there's always going to be a little extra fat down here. That's what helps to hold all the weight up above it. So I'm just going to come right in here. Trim that right straight down.
So do you always use a bat?
No, I do not always use a bat. If I'm throwing small pots, you can use pot lifters to take the pots off. And if they're not bowls, if they're cylinders, they'll hold their shape pretty well, and you can throw one pot after another pot after another pot. If you're going to throw a pot with a lid, however, you need to throw it on the bat. And you need to throw the lid on the bat. And you need to fit them when they're on the bat. But those are lessons on down the line. So now, let's see what this thing looks like. One thing I'm going to want you to notice are the throw rings on the inside. You'll see how much pressure I put in on. And I'm going to pull this right straight up. Just like that. So, that's a thin, well-thrown pot. You can see that the walls are about the same thickness all the way up. That it doesn't have these big, thick walls at the bottom. And then there's the thickness of the bottom. So it has a flat bottom, thin walls. And I wouldn't have these thin walls like this, and especially down here, if I didn't do this step right here. And then that step. That's why I have these thin walls. And that's what you need to learn when you've started to use a little bit more clay and you want to start throwing thinner, straighter, lighter weight pots. So there's a lesson on making a cylinder. And I had high hopes to begin with. And now I feel good. And I knew that I would.